Trump has just announced that 3 ships were sunk off the coast of Venezuela. In addition, there was another fishing boat that was boarded and searched. Now, some people are getting that one confused with the one sunk. No, 3 were actually put underwater. So, my friends, and it's not just that, there is a drone incident right over the presidential palace in Poland. In fact, 2 Belarusians flew a drone over the capital, over the actual presidential palace in Poland. You know, when all these tensions are going up, when all this World War III stuff going on, this is the last thing we need. So we're going to talk about what's going on in Venezuela first, because it's right here under our soft underbelly here in the United States, and it's really heating up down there. 3 ships sunk. Well, guess what, guys? There are actually 8 ships in the Caribbean Sea, one on the way there, probably from the other side of Panama Canal, plus a submarine, which is a boat. So that's 9 major naval assets right there in the Caribbean area right now. Plus, there's 5 F-35, 2 Lightning aircraft, and MQ-9 Reaper drones, you know, the ones we use to shoot at UFOs. See my Collected Greg's video I just posted for that. And guys, there are also refueling tankers, KC-35s, and a lot of, there's a P-8 down there to keep an eye on everything. Guys, we have got some major assets and more going in there. You know, I tend to think this is a little bit more than a drug trade. What do you think? We're going to talk about that. We're going to go all into this. We're going to talk about what President Trump had to say and what's going on with these aircraft down there, the ships. Friends, we are in some interesting times, to say the least, and it could get ugly. It could get ugly right here at home. That's what I keep warning you guys about. So, what did Trump say? He said that we knocked off actually 3 boats, because he was asked about 2. He says, not 2, but you saw 2. So there was videos of 2, but he said we actually knocked off 3. And he told reporters this in the White House lawn as he departed for a visit to London. And he said, and the problem is that there are a few boats out there in the water. There's not a lot of boats out in the water. I can't imagine why. he said facetiously, yeah, I can't imagine why. You know, like, you don't want to get sunk and blown to smithereens. That's what's happening to the boats out there. And I'll share where one of the drug kingpins, who's no longer a drug kingpin, has said that the cartels are afraid to go into the water. So, yes, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. And furthermore, he went on and said that he told Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro, to stop sending Trinity de Agra into the United States, to stop sending drugs to the United States, and stop sending people from your prisons into our country. Now, that's the kind of stuff that we do need to hear. That's what they need to stop doing, right? So there we go. Now, just so happens that he went on to add that he said that these extremely violent drug traffickers, drug trafficking cartels, pose a threat to U.S. national security, foreign policy, and U.S. vital interest. And that's true, but I think there's more to it than just the cartels. And we'll get into that in a little bit. The strike resulted in, and I guess this last one, 3 male terrorists who were off in the action. No U.S. forces were harmed in the strike. Be warned, if you are transporting drugs that can, let's say the word off, and so he said, Americans, we are hunting you. The illicit activities by these cartels have wrought devastating consequences on American communities for decades, often millions of American citizens. No longer, and he says, thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, my friends, as I reported before, we've lost 250,000 Americans to just one particular drug of many that they've been sending over in the past few years. That's 104 times more people than we lost at Pearl Harbor. And you mean, well, the military and the economic impacts aren't as big. Oh, yeah, they are. It's bigger. It's bigger. I've covered that in a previous video. So y'all need to be aware of this. This is some serious stuff. And so you need to be aware of what's cooking here. Uh, he said that cooperative governments would help the U.S. identify drug traffickers and blow them up if that's what it takes. And well, that's exactly what they're doing. I'm going to show you a video of that here in a little bit. I will show you some video of one of these actions where they were taking. Oh yeah, the three were taken out in the second strike. Well, there's been a third strike. So uh, anyway, so what I'm going to do here in a minute is I will show you the map of what's out there. But first, I'm going to show you the video of this drone, excuse me, this Venezuelan boat that was taken out. Let's see if I can do a share video here. And the last time I tried this, my whole computer crashed. Brand new computer. It's got issues. All right, here we are. Let's try this. Try to blow it up. I want to try. Let me the boat. Here's the boat afloat, but not for long. It's about to boom. You see, it just went into a total, complete fireball. Imagine that. Look at this, guys. Yeah, it just basically the light washed out the camera. So, yeah, not a pretty situation. Nobody on that boat will be talking about it. Let's put it that way. No one. So let's look at the map down here. Here is a map of the assets at sea in the Caribbean. And what we have there, we can come here. This is the one that's coming in. This one don't count yet. USS Sampson. We got USS Minneapolis-St. Paul, USS Gravely, USS Jason Dunham. We got the, well, I won't click up here. I won't want to push this. We got MQ-9 Reapers. We got F-35s. We got the USS Newport News attack submarine. So we've got like 3 amphibious ships. We've got cruisers. We've got all kind of assets down there. Why do you put 3 amphibious ships? Amphibious ships are for landing. That invokes the idea of going in and doing some kind of invasion. And why is a submarine way out here to the east and not over here? Oh, I pray the notion that it's looking for interference from other countries. And I think that may be what this game is really all about, possibly, or at least in part. So we'll go into that here in a little bit. So just buckle up. Hang on. That's the video of that. So this is kind of a, yeah, another summary of all the assets that we got down there. And talking about, U.S. bulks up its presence. They see 35s too. USS Air Force lands F-35s in Puerto Rico, growing tensions there. So there's a lot of stuff out there on this. And this drug kingpin says there's a lot of fearful drug traffickers after the airstrikes on the drug boats. You think? What'd you think? I'm going to stop the share because that's the crash my computer earlier. Anyway, guys, so what is it? Why are they doing all this stuff? Well, the drug trafficking is a problem, a huge problem. It's wrecking the United States. The drug problem is wrecking our country. Now, some of it we got to deal with here at home. We got to get to work on that. But there's a little bit more to it than that. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's the oil. Yeah, look, Venezuela is one of the poorest countries in the world right now, but they're also got more oil than anybody. They should be one of the richest nations in the world. But that's what happens when you bring in communism, right? Anyway, look, a third of the people fled Venezuela. A third. That's how bad it is. And a lot of people there are not happy with Maduro. They had an election. I can't talk about elections here on this platform because anyway, you know what I mean? Yeah. So let's say a lot of people aren't favorable with things that have happened there, if you know what I mean. All right, my friends. So, but that's more to it than that. It just so happens that North Korea, Iran, Russia, and China are all very intimately involved with Venezuela. It's said that Iran actually sent Hezbollah units down into Venezuela and it went on down in South America. Maybe some of them came back across our border when somebody left it so wide open. Hmm, not a good thing. Not a good thing. So it just so happens that Iran's been shipping a lot of missiles for some time, for some years, even from the first administration of Trump, I think, and Bush before, to Venezuela. Lots of missiles, lots of arms. China, is playing a big role. Russia's playing a big role. Russia's flew their big military aircraft in and out of there. And as you might recall, I've talked about when I talk about threats to our power grid, that there was this Chung Chung Gang tramp steamer from North Korea floating around in the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, that went out through the Panama Canal because it couldn't get around the horn below South America because of storms. So it buried its booty under a whole lot, many, many tons of sugar, 10,000 tons or something, a crazy number. Well, that ship was stopped and it was searched, and what they found was two fully erect missiles in their missile launchers in an ISO shipping container. They could have been sitting on the deck of that boat just doing a practice run. At the same, and this all was going on. This thing was down there out in the sea out there when the North Korean satellite first flew over Washington, D.C., which was the same day, coincidentally, that the Metcalf station was hit near San Jose, California, Silicon Valley. Oh, yeah. And that was 16 April 2013. I get the 16s and 13s mixed up sometime, but it was 16 April 2013. My friends, there, and then I had my friend Stacy Savicki, who had that vision. Go back and see some others videos about two missiles being launched from off the coast of Venezuela that would EMP the eastern coast of America. And she didn't know what an EMP was or nothing about strategy or tactics, which was exactly the thing I was most worried about because that's our soft underbelly. Remember me saying that earlier? We don't have the radar assets looking south. We got them all looking west and north for Russian, North Korean, and Chinese to attack us. Of course, now with Russia, with the Sarmat, they claim it can go to the South Pole, and maybe this new Dongfang 5 might do the same thing. So, yeah, we got to put some assets looking south now, especially toward Venezuela. At least as long as we got our military in it. It might not pull off her vision, but if we pull back and don't complete the job, they might be angry. Something might happen. See, here's the problem. Anybody could come in under just offshore of Venezuela. Even the Venezuelans might not know about it. They're just offshore of Venezuela. It could be North Korea, it could be Russia, could be China. They all got reasons they would want to see us not be the strongest nation on earth. And is that not the plan of China to supplant us as the number one? They've stated it. That's our national policy. What better way to do it than to bring us to our knees and wipe us out with an EMP attack? And that could happen from there. And you wouldn't know from whence it came. Now, if you dropped a nuke on the ground, you could look at the isotopes, but when it's way up in the atmosphere, that's just going to be so dilute, you're not going to see it. And there ain't going to be much left of America due to the societal collapse that we'll have after an EMP. We will be in bad shape, very bad shape. So that is a real risk. That is a real risk. And maybe even Iran, because it's been rumored that Iran had already had, from when Kazakhstan fell, 4 nukes. It already got some. That's been one of the things that's been talked about in the intel circles for many years, ever since the Iron Curtain fell, back when Yeltsin was president, when he assumed presidency of Russia. So this could be an issue. And that may be a lot of why we're down there doing what we're doing. And we may be just using the cover of drug operations so as not to too much alarm China and Russia, North Korea, maybe. But why is that sub, the U.S. Newport News, out east of the Virgin Islands, out east of the Caribbean islands, looking up to the Atlantic? Well, even if maybe we aren't doing it for those reasons, we apparently are concerned there might be interference. And interference from a major nation like that could lead to a much wider conflict. You see what I'm saying? and we're probably heading toward one already. There was just another incident today between a Filipino ship and a Chinese ship. That's another piece of news. I'll probably cover this tomorrow. The Chinese, of course, are accusing the Filipinos of ramming their ship. We know that in all the videos, it's usually pretty to be the other way around. And there was something about a water cannon used. So look out, guys. With China, it's not pretty. Oh yeah, and the Chinese are just taking a picture of one of our satellites, one of their satellites. So they were just showing. They sent it to us just to show us, wink, wink, look, we got you. Wink, wink, space is ours. Is that what they're trying to say? Uh, if they take out our satellites, our military accomplishes their great deeds through the data fusion, command and control, and all that's going through satellites right now. Most of it. So without our satellite network, our military is going to lose a lot of functionality real fast. So yeah, it's a critical asset, what we got up in space. That's why Donald Trump created the Space Force. All right, my friends. So I just want you to understand the background of all these things, of all these drivers, and understand that, it's not insignificant that we got all these F-35s down there in the Caribbean, just circling around, and amphibious warships loaded with Marines, U.S. destroyers cutting across the Venezuelan waters. And Washington says it's all for a drug crackdown. Well, traffickers don't have F-16s, navies, or air forces. So the real question is it drug war or regime change? And why would we want a regime change? Is it for the oil, national security, or all the above? I want y'all to leave some messages in the chat below. Tell me what you think it is. So, it's not just Venezuela. It's not just cocaine. Yeah, see, that's just it. The F-ball stuff comes through Mexico. Yet we're focusing on Venezuela. I would dare say we get more stuff through Mexico. Maybe we're cooperating somewhat with Mexico. Maybe it's that most of the stuff in Mexico was coming over land, and from Venezuela via sea, somewhat over land. I don't know. But I think there's more to this story than drugs. That's why I say that, my friends. So, reading between the lines, when superpowers flex their muscles, something's going on. So I have to decode this stuff, guys. The signals, the media skips on this stuff because they're not telling you. When does the media tell you the stuff I tell you, huh? Or when's the other prepping channels play out and explain to you guys the real threat from the area of Venezuela? And it's not just from the Venezuelans. The Venezuelans really can't pose us a lot of threat other than shipping Trinity to Agra up here and causing a lot of Americans to start pushing daisies. That is a threat. Or send sleeper cells into this country that could really take us to our knees. Maduro don't like us. He might be playing hardball now. This asymmetric warfare is the only ace card he's got. That's why I tell you guys, it may come home. So, looking at it through the prepper's lenses too, you need to know there's always sparks before the explosion, and the sparks are getting mighty intense down there. So, and sparks in Latin America rather rarely stays local. So, but Venezuela is a major trafficking route, but like I said, it's more than just drugs. The U.S. indicts Maduro and his generals, call them narco terrorists. We got sanctions and indictments and, trying to choke the regime. But Maduro says it's just cover for an invasion like in Panama in 1989. But, Colombia quietly supports the United States. That's why Maduro's putting his forces on the Colombian border. But Trump just kind of delisted them as an ally. And so Colombia is in retribution canceled a major defense order from the United States. Why did Trump do that? I don't know. Maybe he knows something we don't know. He's got the intel. He reads the morning daily briefs, or somebody at least tells him what's in them. I've heard he don't actually read them, but I don't know. He gets briefed. Anyway, so we got every ingredient here for a showdown. Cooking. So what does the media won't tell you about these F-35 deployments built for precision strikes? Not smugglers. Amphibious assault ships, Marines. The F-35 two, lightning's flying, around. Hmm. Electronic warfare, drones, down at, and they're jamming and probably shooting down drones from Venezuela. Rules of engagement are stretched, and smugglers are probably often unarmed, and maybe they're not always smugglers. Anybody that's suspect is prone to go swimming with the fishes. Anyway, historic patterns, guys, narrow missions lead to full-scale wars. Quite often, things escalate. So, and signals to the Allies, Colombia, Brazil. And Brazil's not really much of an ally, as but what's happening? We got bigger rivals like Russia and Iran are kind of circling this, and that's why the Newsport News is out there. So anyway, guys, so Venezuela does have a few F-16s and they're buzzing our destroyers. That's true, but Trump's threatening to shoot them down. I'm just saying the cartels don't have the F-16s, but Venezuela does. Like I said, they have buzzed our destroyers. But dare they try to attack? It would be a sure way to not go home. Do it, to take your plane and go swimming with the fishes again. So, in any event, my friends, so if there's one misstep, cartel crackdown flips into state versus state combat. Drug bust narratives just don't fit with this, guys. Jets squaring off, in the contested skies, F-16s from, I don't think their F-16s are going to match our F-35s. F-16s are a great plane, but they haven't had the latest updates for those either. So, yeah, this is the largest show of force in the U.S. in decades. And the destroyers carry Tomahawk missiles. The carrier, we may get carriers in there. Who knows where we're going? So it looks less like an introduction, and it does kind of have the trappings of an invasion preparation, maybe. Anyway, so something to smoke, putting your pipe and smoke, guys. So there, there's ethical and gray zones. Who are we really taking out? There's the escalation risk. One radar ping or a missile lock may lead to war. So, yeah, and the whole drug cartel business, that's probably just a fig leaf for invasion. So is this whole thing a bluff or bait? What are we actually trying to accomplish down there? Stealth fighters, warships, not just for the cartels. No, I can't buy that. It's about leverage, regime change, and power projection. It's bluff or build up. But hey, the fuse is burning. Watch for the sparks, which we're already getting some good ones. And then the subsequent explosions. So, guys, now let's talk a little bit about this. We'll talk a little bit about what happened in Poland. As you know, and I just covered last night in a live session, which was really in the wee hours this morning. Poland, shot down some Russian drones. Russia's basically said that was an act of war. Poland's tried to say we need a no-fly zone over Ukraine. That would be an act of war, by the way. That would be an act of war. And so the tensions are ratcheted up in that environment. Also, a drone flew into Romania from Russia. In that environment, somebody had the wherewithal, the cojones, to fly a drone right over the presidential palace of Poland. Just happened. And it said they neutralized it. What does that mean? Bang, bang? Well, they caught the operators, apparently, at least allegedly, two Belarusians. Now, does that suspect? Because Belarus and Russia are like that. So, maybe the Russians sent the Belarusians so they would have plausible deniability. Were they trying to get intel? Or were they sending a message? Or were they just saying, guys, this is ours. To heck with y'all. And actually, they made some statements about the United States, even, NATO defending Poland. So is Poland getting in the crosshairs of Russia? I don't think Russia right now could really take on anybody, except maybe the Baltic states, in addition to And I doubt they really want to do that just right yet until they get a better stronghold footing in Ukraine. I just have a hard time saying because Ukraine, they're losing a lot of people just gaining a few inches there, and that's a great cost to the country. So opening another avenue of war, I don't know. The problem is it could all slip into it all too easy. But you know what? The real reason for all this might be it may be because China's about to invade Taiwan. I'm just saying maybe because China would love nothing more than to have their little pet poodle bear growling and scratching and getting our attention away so that we're not looking over there, distracting our attention. So they might even encourage it to get a little hot over in Europe just so they can pull off what they want to do. And as you know, I talked about how Putin and little Kim and Xi all met together, and there's talks and suppositions that there was a deal cut between little Kim Jong Un, and and Xi Jinping, that Kim Jong Un would conduct maneuvers and do things to keep us from sending forces from South Korea to reinforce a battle with Taiwan, which is something we'd been planning on our side. So this is a plan to thwart our plans. So we might see stuff pop off in every theater. Now, here's the problem. We're just 2 weeks away from the sea states of the Strait of Taiwan getting calm enough for an invasion force. And there's those that think that China might attack us even before they would go into Taiwan. They might blockade Taiwan first. They might throw some missiles in there. They would to soften up the targets. And what we hadn't counted on, and which is apparent now, they've actually got paratroopers set up to jump into Taiwan. They weren't prepared for that one. And now they got this big roll on, roll off, landing ships that they can dock together and raise up like a pier to stabilize them and put out a big landing ramp to get over the beach. So they don't have to have a good beach to land on anymore. Oh yeah, China's been really engineering and stuff, and they just built new ports and airfields just right there next to right across from Taiwan, right across the strait. Oh, they just did it because they thought they looked good, because they thought they were pretty, right? We're living in perilous times, my friends, and even if we don't get involved in it there, I've done some analysis, we're searching through AI, and it indicates that China's going to come after us sooner or later. And, like I've always said, they're already at war with us. That's what the F-ball stuff's all about. I call it F-ball. It starts with the word fent and ends with the word anal. You got to be careful what you say around here, but on these platforms, especially this one. But, guys, with 250,000 Americans pushing daisies, that is nothing to lose sight of. Something bad is going down. We know they got sleeper cells here. We know they had a bio lab in Reedy, California, which we weren't supposed to find. How many more of those are there? We know they've been mapping our assets over here on the ground with guys that are on the ground. We know that their national intelligence law requires all the Chinese citizens, to report back any intel asked of them by the CCP. That's the law. So here we want to invite over a bunch of students right into our universities where we do our critical research. I don't know, guys. We are heading into perilous times. That's all I got to say. Let's just hope and pray it don't happen now. We got more time to come to our senses and better prepare ourselves and start looking more like a porcupine that the dragon wouldn't want to bite. And you yourself need to get ready. You need to get prepared. You need to do whatever you can. And, one of the things China is doing is they're not just going after our citizens who might be inclined to take stuff they should not ought to take. Maybe they're depressed, or I don't know what's going on in their lives. But guys, we got to work on that. But guys, they're also attacking our economy. That's what BRICS is all about. That's why they're trying to take our dollar down, is from being the world's reserve currency. And they are hitting. And guess what? Gold is up at new highs right now. Right now, gold is up 3,600. Let's see, what is it? me pull it up here. Is gold sitting at this moment? $3,682.41. So I highly encourage y'all to go to defythegrid.com and look there because silver is really projected to go up. You can buy gold, silver, platinum, palladium, I think even copper. You can get it in bars, you can get it in rounds, coins, and they've got a guarantee nobody else has got. And that is if you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll meet it or beat it. And what I really like is they sell these gold backs. This is a fungible amount of gold. This is 1/1000th of a troy ounce, something I could trade. A bar of gold is 1/10 of a mansion, a big SUV. This thing here is a loaf of bread, and barter it for a loaf of bread, a 12 pack of eggs, something that is more practical that you need on a day-to-day basis. Gold backs. So you'll find all that on defythegrid.com and use discount code GreenGregs to get 1% off. They operate on small margins. I think their total margins like 3 to 4%. Varies 3 to 4%. That's pretty tight. But you can get 1% off if you use the discount code GreenGregs. That's how they maintain their guarantee. If you find a better price from us, I'll meet it a bit. Anyway, enough said for all that. Guys, the bottom line is this. Get ready, prepare. I'm taking it seriously. I'm living in my bug out location. I bugged out. Now my bug out's my bug in. And I'm gardening, homestead, and I'm working on it. Just put in rainwater collection. And hopefully I'll get a well once I get the moolah to cover that. I don't have that at the moment, but I'm working on it. So, take it seriously. I take it seriously. I want you to take it seriously too, because I hope we can all get through whatever's come at us. So pray that it don't. But we got civil strife right here in our country. We may be on the verge of a civil war. We're at least in a cold civil war already. It may go more kinetic than it has. And people just aren't safe on the streets right now. With all the thugs, the courts just turn out, they just run them around and around. As soon as they come in, they go right back out on the streets. Just like a guy in Charlotte who got arrested 14 times, turn loose, turn loose, turn loose. And what he did, that poor girl who fled as a refugee from Ukraine. Tragic. Stuff like that. And that's just one of many stories. So this is why you need to be situationally aware, my friends. I really compel you to keep your eyes wide open, head on a swivel. Keep some means of self-defense on you, even if it's just some sneezy spray, if you know what I'm talking about. I mean, serious stuff like maybe wasp spray. It's spray 20 foot. That comes in a big bottle. Maybe it won't fit in your little purse, but you can get some bear spray. You can get other stuff, guys. But if you're in a situation you don't know your safety and you don't know the status of, and you're sitting there totally glued into your phone, to you, that's the only thing that exists in the world. But there is a world around you, and that world might decide to eat you. We've seen that happen tragically. So this is why you need to be situationally aware. That's why I say keep your eyes wide open and head on a swivel. And my followers are affectionately known as swivel heads because I know you're doing it. But just don't forget it. All right, that's the main advice I have. Prep and pray and hope we got a better day. Get right with your maker, but you never know. I mean, a rock could fall out of the sky on your head. Anything can happen. So, no, the next second is not guaranteed. Make the most out of everyone you have, and make sure you tell those that you love them every chance you get. But you never know when the last time you'll see somebody is. I had a neighbor in Alabama. He came up to say goodbye to me. I knew I was coming back, so I said, "Well, I'd say goodbye now." Well, he went to the hospital, and he didn't make it. I just found out today he passed a couple of weeks ago. So I was planning to go back and talk to him and give him a proper goodbye, but it didn't happen. So, but I did talk to him. Wow. So you just never know, God, friends. You never know. You never know. But make the most out of every moment you got in this world. Try to make it a better world. We got to find a way to try to, build hope in this world, to get out of this quagmire we're in, and something to encourage the young people so they don't feel like they got to turn to stuff that does them no good, or at least give them a spirit put a fire in their souls where, they want to get through all this and make it on the other side and not have to deal with that. I don't know. That's, why put poison in your system? I don't know, my friends. I just don't get it. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for watching. Subscribe, bang the bell, and click all. I put a video link up here, probably already shown. Anyway, thank you for watching. Greg out.